Intelligence head Dumisani Khumalo will continue his testimony at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry today. On his first day, yesterday, he blew the lid on a dangerous criminal cartel operating in Gauteng. He says the criminal enterprise came to be known by crime intelligence as the Big Five. This syndicate is accused of running drug networks, orchestrating hijackings, looting tenders, and even carrying out contract killings. Let's take you live to the Bridget Mabandla Justice College in Pretoria, where that commission is sitting. Both Iman Repeti and Ziyanda Ngobo join us live from there now. Iman, let me kick things off again with you. The tentacles of this run deep because it's towards the SIU that we even began to see as well. But even that announcement of a new evidence leader coming to bear for the Madlanga Commission yesterday.
That's right, Arabile, and certain thoughts are starting to crystallize in our minds, perhaps in a way that they haven't ever before. And what we're understanding now is that when corruption becomes systemic, it is no longer about money. It is about power, it is about protection, and it is about permanence. And these are really concerning things because they are showing us the scale of the evil that we need to vanquish. And we're seeing those themes emanate here at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, but also in that explosive SIU briefing yesterday. I want to talk about systemic abuse with Eldred de Klerk. And one of the disturbing things that we heard yesterday was around the account of Lieutenant General Khumalo about even a councillor who burnt his own house, killing his family, claiming to be the target of an arson attack. It's just one sign, one red flag, again, in this entire, as the nation begins to understand just how rotten things became. Tell us a little bit more about that piece and why it's so important.
Well, it's important because it crystallizes what the National Commissioner Masemola started talking to us about, how councillors are inflicting harm on themselves and then claiming that they need protection. This is an abuse of state power and authority and state protections, but also abuse of the provisions of the law. But what it does do, it diverts the energies and resources of an essential protection services, of the police and of investigation units. So it takes the energies away and the ability away to be able to delve deeper into other areas of corruption and concern. So the political expediency and the personal benefit from claiming that you need protection, we shouldn't underestimate that. Because this is about not just political positioning, but it's been in a position to then determine if you will hopefully win a seat or you get into some sort of position of authority, of tenders, of development contracts, of public budget spend, which also tells us as South Africans, we need to know more about municipal budgets. We need to know where our money's been spent, who's it been spent on, and why is it not being spent on quality of life issues that affect all of South African citizens.
And even though we are fixated on the big names, because what we're hearing about is that there are these entrenched systemic networks that are taking advantage of the system. But in a context of a lack of governance, a lack of oversight and accountability, what you're talking about in that example begins to take hold. So the system is being attacked. It's almost as if, like when big game attacks a prey, what they leave behind is scavenged upon by others. And that, I think, is a really apt metaphor for what we're seeing here.
And it's prudent, then, that we remember that this is not just about what's happening in the police. It's also what's happening, as we heard from Advocate Harrison, what's happening within the criminal justice system as a whole and within her Justice Department. And as what we heard also around the divisions within an essential unit like IDAC, for example. So this cuts across departments because now we have the Department of Health involved in this. So who says what's happening in education with the school feeding scheme, housing and the provision of housing. So when we asked Pretoria to sit up and take notice, and it was an apt view to give the viewers the view of the union buildings, because it is there and in our seat of the legislative seat in Cape Town that those politicians and our public representatives now need to take notice and to start fulfilling their role in trying to correct the ship.
I can't swear on air because then we'll go to the BCCSA and they'll never allow us back. But how buggered are we?
Well, I think we've always predicated what we do here on the basis of the fact that we're hopeful and optimistic as South Africans. When we go down, we have the ability to get up, we have a great sense of humor, and we always try to take it on the chin. I don't think we should take this on the chin now. Now we should be active and angry citizens and make sure that we put our shoulder to the wheel so that this commission is the last of the commissions that we need.
And it's so important. I'm going to pick on that theme a little bit later on, Arabile, because as South Africans, as we hear this, we mustn't become paralyzed with fear and give up. This is the moment, I think, that Eldred is inviting us all to, is to really begin to rally with this information that we have. Ziyanda Ngobo has been giving us excellent analysis and a recap of what's been happening at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. And Ziyanda, we're expecting to turn the page as we begin to understand, perhaps, hopefully, more names and networks of connections as Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo continues his testimony this morning.
That's right, Timan, and you'll recall that yesterday what seemed like a slow start began to pick up a pace with Dumisani Khumalo really going through his 30-year career, a colorful one, I might add, in the South African police service. And dare I say that this was deliberate to demonstrate the level of excellence that he has been recognized for within the police service, but in a way, perhaps in a roundabout way, to respond to critics. Of course, you'll know he still has that case against him. It's an HR case related to the appointment of a 29-year-old Dineo Mukwele within the South African Police Service. And in fact, that matter was in court, the Pretoria Magistrate Court, just yesterday. But insofar as turning over the page, we expect to hear more details about this Big Five cartel, which Khumalo claims has infiltrated the political arena. This is very important, because then we started getting names. We heard how Vusmuzi Kat Matlala, who's also been implicated in the SIU reports at Tembisa Hospital, he is said to have paid money to Brown Mokhotsi, who would pay for delegates to go to an ANC conference. Now, this is very important information coming out, and if there's evidence of the movement of monies, it will become even more critical insofar as the kind of issues when it comes to political party funding and the nexus between political parties and business and that cycle of tenders. And remember what Mkwanazi told us about the tender system being at the heart of political killings as we edge closely to those 2026 local government elections. It will be very important, especially for Khumalo, who both Fani Masemola and Nhlanhla Mkwanazi defer to insofar as him being able to bring the evidence to be able to actually, unpack further over the next today and the next couple of days this nexus between business, political parties, and the political arena, in particular the country's executive and possibly even parliament. Remember, at the beginning of his statement, Khumalo said he would also unpack the retaliatory attacks on those who were trying to continue with the work of the political killings task team, which he says was misidentified by these criminal cartels as being responsible. The political killings task team, that is, was misidentified for being responsible for disrupting this network. So who else would have been part of this network? How much does, or how deep does this rot go? And what can actually practically be done if this is a systemic issue, given how the recommendations of this commission are not binding on the president? And a lot of talk about what is likely to come, the president possibly having to come before this very commission. Terry Mutau leaving as the chief evidence leader. There's a new chief evidence leader. So far, the Madlanga Commission spokesperson, Jeremy Michaels, maintaining that there'll be absolutely no disruption to the work of this commission. But insofar as today's evidence is concerned, when it comes to Khumalo, we expect to get more names, more detail, and the momentum picking up a whole lot more. Iman?
As that body of evidence, Sianda, continues to build, and I use that that expression deliberately because everything is so interconnected and interdependent, similar to the human body. And it's important because when we think about the body of our law enforcement and prosecutorial complex in South Africa, Eldred, we are seeing how what's happening in policing, what's happening in IDAC, what's happening in the SIU, what's happening in the PKTT, which brought us here, are all interconnected.
Absolutely, and continuing with your analogy and metaphor around systems and bodies, if one part of it is ailing, or one part of it is limb or infected, it infects the entire body. And that is what South Africans are listening for, that's what we're learning, and we need to now start looking at how do we correct that. But before we correct, we actually need to know the extent and the scope of it. So off air, we're speaking about cancer and how do you deal with that. Maybe you need to dig deeper and cut out the whole cancer. And unfortunately, as much as these analogies are graphic, they start to begin to give us a sense of just exactly what we're dealing with.
And Arabile, as I come back to you, I used the term yesterday that we should err on the side of sagacity and not sensation, but also not to give in to a type of paralysis. We should be looking very closely, listening very hard to this evidence as it informs us of exactly how bad things are, so that we know exactly the corrective course of action, similar to what Eldred is suggesting, that we need to embark on in this moment, once and for all, as a country. Back to you.
Very important. Such a distinct and really important warning as well that you put out there, Iman, for us to not sensationalize, as you say. So very, very critical, but at the same time, very important too. So thank you so much for that report.